A couple of months ago, before the COVID-19 lockdown, someone came up to me and said, "David, I hear you're retiring." He wasn't the first to say something like that. Other people have thought that I was moving to the UK this summer to take up a new appointment. And there are those of you who might be even surprised to hear that anything is changing at all. There are big changes on the horizon for me, but I'm not retiring, nor am I going to the UK. This story is about a new Christian retreat house here on the Isle of Man. But first, I need to take you back to the year 2007, which is when I took my first sabbatical. I opted to find out about the origins of the Christian faith on the Isle of Man. I walked some of the coastal paths and visited the keels along the way, and I did some reading around the subject of new monastic communities. And I was troubled by a question that just wouldn't go away. And this was the question. The island has a rich Christian history. We've got more Christian artefacts per square mile than anywhere else in the British Isles. Beautiful landscapes, dark skies, clean air, there's peace, there's tranquility. So the question was this: why wasn't there a Christian retreat house here on the island? So I came back from sabbatical, and the way I describe it is that, well, it was as if God had laid this on my heart, the vision of a retreat house. And somehow within that vision, I was to be part of that. I jotted down my thoughts, shared them in various places, and discovered that I wasn't the first by any means, that there were others on the island equally convinced of this need. Now, there might be some of you listening to me now saying, "This is really interesting, David, it sounds great, but what exactly is a Christian retreat house? Because, as you say, we've not got one, and we don't know." And that's a really good question. A retreat house is a place of welcome, a place where you can disengage from the preoccupations of everyday life and find some space to be still, to reflect, to pray, creating space for God's presence to be more readily noticed. There's usually the opportunity to be listened to and to pray and worship with others. Retreat houses will often have a program, everything from quiet days to speaker-led retreats, or there might be particular activities. Here on the island, there are the keels and the crosses to be explored, and the Triskelion Way pilgrimage route. Retreat houses are about helping people to hear the still small voice of God, to find peace and direction for their lives. Well, ideas and dreams are one thing, aren't they? But we all know that if they're going to happen, they need energy and resources to make them happen. And very soon for me, after that sabbatical, well, the busyness of life took over, life and ministry and being a dad and all of that. There were a couple of times when, with others, we explored potential places for a retreat here on the island, but they weren't suitable. And I simply parked the idea. Now, of course, sometimes an idea can be right, but it's the timing that isn't right. And in God's purposes and plans, when the timing is right, something happens, which takes us to last year. It was back in late February or March of 2019 that, completely out of the blue, I got an email from someone involved in the Island Spirituality Network. And in the email, I was asked, "Are you still interested in that retreat house idea?" Well, we met up a few days later for coffee, and I was told there was a strong possibility that a very suitable house might become available. Was I interested in coming on board? And if so, would I be interested in the role of warden? Well, on the way home, to use the biblical phrase, my heart was burning within me. But there was, for me, one particular stumbling block that I couldn't see a way around. I don't need to go into details here and now, but within a few weeks, that problem was dealt with completely without me having to do anything about it. And I took that as a green light from God to go ahead. Well, the house is in Peel. It's called Wattleworth House, and some of you may remember it from the days when it was a residential home for older people. Since then, it's been the family home for a lovely couple called Dave and Lizzie McLean. Dave and Lizzie have now decided that they need to downsize, but they wanted to see if the house could in some way be used for God's purposes. So, since last spring, a small group of people has been meeting and praying and seeking advice, making plans for what will hopefully be a retreat house. Wattleworth House itself is a large house. It's set within its own gardens. It potentially has 9 twin guest rooms. There's a lovely big lounge and a room that's ideal for prayer and worship. With an architect's help, we've got plans to create a ground floor disabled friendly suite and a 1-bedroom flat for a live-in member of staff. And we'd like to put ensuite facilities in some of the guest rooms. And of course, Peel's a wonderful place, isn't it? The cathedral is just around the corner with its newly developed gardens. There's the old cathedral on St Patrick's Isle, and of course, easy access to some very beautiful walks. Now that we have change of use planning permission, our next step is to set up a charitable trust and seek funding for building works this summer. We have a name. The house is going to be called Thie, which in Manx Gaelic means house of life. In John's Gospel, Jesus said that he'd come so that we might have life in all its fullness. Thie isn't going to be a specifically Methodist house. It's going to be non-denominational. The idea is that we wish to serve the whole of the Christian community of the island, the whole of the church, and to be open and welcoming to all. I'm delighted that Judy Cannon, a reader in the Church of England, is going to be my co-worker because Judy's got a huge amount of experience in setting up and working with retreat houses. The trustee team will be made up of Dave and Lizzie, the house owners, along with Judith Lay and the Reverend Alex Brown. So there you go. I'm not retiring, I'm not moving to the UK, and I'll still be an ordained Methodist minister, but I have permission from the church to express my ministry in this new way. It feels like an exciting and scary adventure. I've been a Methodist minister since 1997, working with local churches, and in many ways that's very safe and secure. Whereas now, well, who knows? There's a story in the book of Genesis chapter 12, where God says to Abraham, and okay, at that point he's still called Abram, but God says to him, get up and go to the land that I will show you. And I just think that is so wonderfully unspecific. Go to the land that I will show you. And that verse has resonated with me over the last few months, because we don't fully know what's ahead, but we do know that we walk with Jesus, and that's what counts. Very soon we're going to be producing more information about Thie. If you'd like to receive that, please do get in touch with me. I'd love to hear from you. And of course, please do hold this project in prayer as we seek to make the vision a reality for the island.